And you're live.
Okay, hopefully we're live. We're gonna adjust the audio levels a little bit because I had some issues.
Stop yelling at us.
I might be yelling at you.
Yeah,
Valerie's
right.
gonna adjust that real quick. Let us know if you can see us and hear us, and we will get started.
Testing.
And I think someone had a question before the live stream got started, so we'll see if we can answer that and wait for some more people to join. Can you find it?
Yeah, but I'm swapping screens. You have me backwards.
Okay, I set it up wrong.
I don't have that good a vision. I need the...
Actually, where's my safety glasses?
They're over here.
Okay.
Mr. Fancy Eyes. Chad got LASIK.
So I got LASIK because I couldn't stand my glasses fogging up while wearing a mask. It's been on my to-do list for a long time. Unfortunately, after I paid them, signed all the contracts, like 2 minutes before going into the operating room, the eye doctor says, okay, we need to have a talk. And he then told me, since I have really bad astigmatism, that my eyesight's not going to be clear for a while. So they have to overcorrect for it. I have to wait a month or two to see if it goes back to the right amount. And if it's not, then they burn them again, I guess. So, dropping stuff. That's my eyesight story. So if you see me squinting,
Good story.
it's because I can't see anything.
So that answers Phil's question.
Did you ask why I have my safety squints on all the time. So Phil's question.
Well, first, do you want to tell us what this video is?
Sure.
And then we'll go super chat, and then we'll do Phil's question.
Okay. This video is I believe it's a 1999, 1999 Toyota 4Runner with a 3.4. I traded my 52 Chevy truck, project truck, for this because this is a little more of what I'm into and this is what I can make money on quicker. So I traded straight across, and it needed some repairs. I've done quite a bit of that, but it has a rough idle and like a misfire at idle. It doesn't do it when it's cold. It does it when it's hot, especially after it heat soaks. If I jump in it right now, hopefully it's still warm enough because I've been setting up for a couple hours. It'll run rough. Check engine light is on. Surprisingly, it went off the other day, even though I could still feel a miss. But it did come back on when I drove it down here. My Zeus is being sent out for the Windows 10 upgrade, so I don't have the scanner on screen for you guys. My Diagon that I was going to use is dead, plus a really small screen. It would have been hard for me to capture that. So I'm going to use a Snap-on Ethos, and I'll just hold the camera in front of it when we check codes. I want to keep this very basic. Not everybody out there has a lab scope, whether it be Snap-on, Pico, Autel, whatever it is. Not everyone has access to that, or they may not have the experience to run that scope. So I want to keep it very basic using a digital multimeter. I showed a fluke in the picture, but I can screen share from my iPad my Snap-on digital multimeter, so that's what I'm going to use instead. Gives you guys that little visual for any component testing that we do. So basic tools: compression gauge, vacuum gauge, Noid light, spark tester, test light, digital multimeter. I want to keep it, kind of what the old timers would use for this video. And now super chats.
Yes, you got one from Cody at Cody Auto Diagnostics, and one from Steve at Simply Diagnostics.
Sweet, thank you, Cody. Man, are you paying me for promotion because I'm not using your pulse sensor today because that requires a scope? And Steve, how much did Steve donate?
5 pounds.
5 pounds of cash.
I don't know what that means.
5 pounds of gold?
Woo!
Yeah, I don't know what the translation is. I think it's about the same as Cody's donation. So I really appreciate it. It helps buy the gear that brings these shows to you guys. And Phil's question now,
Yes,
right?
Phil had a question before we started. He says, how do you go about testing which fuel pump is weak on a 2005 Sierra 6.0 at Schrader valve?
Okay,
Fuel pressure goes
from 55 to 30?
Yes, flooring it.
So as far as I know, I thought those only had one fuel pump unless it's a dual tank truck, which I didn't know they made that in those years. Maybe on some of the long bed dualies, but it should only have one pump in the tank, a high pressure pump. If your pressure is dropping off under load, then that fuel pump probably can't deliver enough fuel. There shouldn't be a secondary pump on the frame rail. Now, if there is multiple tanks, if you flip the selector, if it has a selector, I really don't know because I don't own a Chevy. But I don't think I've ever seen one come in with dual tanks that had a selector. So maybe it does like an autofill from one tank to the other if it does have dual tanks.
It's a dual tank.
Dual tank?
Yeah.
Is there a selector? Valerie doesn't know.
I'm waiting on the chat.
if there's no selector, then I'm assuming that it pumps from one to the other, but I'd have to look up the diagram and see. I don't think I've ever seen one in here with dual tanks.
Yeah, me either.
Valerie hasn't either.
Brian says, hey.
Who?
Brian?
Hey, Brian, how's it going? Brian, good?
Yes.
Okay. We gotta clarify. We got a lot of Brians out there. So I really wanted to share the scanner screen with you guys, and I plugged in my J2534 programming tool just to see if I had a generic scan tool with that I could screen share with you. And I could only read codes. So I'm like, well, if we want to see data, that won't work. I was thinking HP tuner, no problem. But unfortunately, it was at home. Valerie just arrived down here, so I didn't want to send her back home to grab it. So
I can go get it.
you'd have to find it.
Phil says, no, just pumps from the rear tank to front.
So if it's pumping from the rear to the front, I'm assuming that it uses the level sensor in the front. Once it gets down below a certain point, it automatically kicks the rear pump on, which the rear pump is probably a high volume, low pressure pump, and it just dumps it into the front tank. Don't quote me on that because I don't know the system. So I'm assuming that your front tank is the primary tank and primary pump, the high pressure and volume pump. So if that one is dropping under wide open acceleration, then it can't provide the volume necessary to maintain that 55 plus PSI. Because most of those run 55 to 65 kind of range, depending on if it's wide open or vacuum to the regulator or not. Unless it's a returnless on that year, but still, if it pumps from the rear to the front, then the front is going to be the primary pump. And that's probably the one that's bad. But you'll want to check voltage drop, make sure you have good power back there. They always make you update the harness when you put the new pump in. Anything else?
Yes, a comment. As a master Toyota dealership technician, I'm interested to see how you will diagnose this problem. I look forward to learning something new. And that's from EK?
EK?
Yes.
Okay. Depending on where you live and how long you've been a master Toyota tech, you may not have even worked on many of these 4runners, because I know, especially the East Coast, they rust out terribly. I own two of them. There's another one right over here that's my mother's, and we just had that one. We got a wrap put on it, but this one has 210,000 miles. Mine has 320. We did the live head gasket replacement on that one a couple weeks ago, and that one I'm sure has over 200,000 miles with the supercharger and all that stuff. So I don't have TechStream hooked up either, so you may see a little bit different scan tool information. So let's jump into it.
Now, I'm not sure if Brian is talking to you or talking to Phil, but he says volume test the pump.
Volume test the pump if you have a flow meter.
And Alejandro has a question.
Yeah.
Is this going to last 5 hours? Because he has to be in bed early.
No. Here's my goal. We'll say the customer has approved us 1 hour diagnostic time. So we are going to shoot to try to diagnose this vehicle in less than an hour because we want to make more money than what we're spending time on it. So that's really up to you guys on how fast we get it done without a scope. With a scope, we could probably get it done a little faster, but it's a little more complicated. And if you're new to scopes, you may spend 3 times as much time trying to figure it out. So we need a few basic things for a vehicle to run properly. We need air, we need fuel, and we need a source of ignition. And we need all of those things to happen at the correct time. So those are the things that we're going to primarily check. I'll give you the information. The misfire feels like it's only on one cylinder. We'll scan it to verify that. We'll look at data, see if it's actually picking up misfire data. I do have a hose on it out the door because we got all the doors shut because it's getting hot and we got the air conditioner on. So I don't know if we'll hear it real bad when it's running, but it shakes really bad in gear. So I'll probably, I'll try to focus in on the scanner with my GoPro and we'll go there. So I'm gonna scan it first and Valerie can yell at me if there's questions.
Do you want me to switch screens?
Oh, this isn't long enough. Oh, barely. Well, yeah, go ahead.
What do you want me on your head?
Yeah. So we are just going to go to generic OBD2. Not sure if you could hear that. My dog just sighed like, oh, this is going to take forever. OBD direct. And Valerie can let me know if you guys can see that.
Can you guys? Oh yeah, sorry. They can also hear you. Oh gosh. Oh lordy.
So even though not everyone may have an Ethos Edge, a generic scan tool is going to operate the same way, whether you're going to AutoZone and pulling codes or using just a cheap Bluetooth interface off of Amazon. That's why I'm going generic today, just to simulate not having, you know, the fancy tools that we normally use in our live streams. And, you know, some of those cheap OBD scanners communicate way faster than this one does in generic mode. Okay, so it found one controller, an engine controller. Now this is an automatic, but it's all built into one module. So we are going to go to trouble codes. And I would have wiped off this screen if I knew I was planning on using this scanner, but it's a little smudged up, a little dusty. Come on, nice and slow here. Gathering codes. So we have a cylinder 2 misfire. I don't know if you can see that, but P0302, cylinder 2 misfire detected. Now I don't think that we'll have misfire data in generic, but we might on this one. We'll start it up, see if it is still currently misfiring, and make sure that no other cylinders are counting misfires. Make sure it's just isolated to the one. Toyotas are normally pretty good at counting the correct cylinder. And we're still going slow.
Can you tilt it a little bit so we don't have as much glare? Yeah. Yeah, right there. That's good.
Like that?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry if I just yelled in everyone's ears.
I'm probably shaking all over the place too. Okay, I'm just going to scroll down through here, see if we have misfire data, look at some of the other stuff we have as well. So we got fuel trims, we got ignition timing, we can use that stuff. Nope, we don't have misfire data in generic OBD2 mode, but we can verify that we have a misfire on that cylinder. So if you remember, we were cylinder 2 misfire. I'm going to go ahead and start it up and confirm that we have the misfire happening right now, and then we'll go under the hood. So you can probably see it a little bit in the shifter. Let me put it in gear. You know, it's putting along, the shifter's shaking. Now the RPM is pretty steady. You know, we're probably 750, 800 RPM. We turn the air conditioner off, and the fan will kick down here in a second, but we'll have to listen to a noisy cooling fan for a few more minutes. You can go ahead and go back to the main.
Main.
Actually, switch to the left side. So if we look at the engine's actually staying pretty still. It shakes a little bit. It's a lot worse in gear. I can put it in gear with the parking brake on, and it shouldn't run us over. We'll probably do it in reverse just so, you know, even the e-brake doesn't hold as well in reverse. That way it'll go backwards instead of running us over. But what we can do is we can verify that cylinder 2 is misfiring by, you know, pulling a spark plug wire, and that'll tell us for sure that it's number 2. Now, firing order on this Toyota, the passenger side bank or the right hand bank is going to be 1, 3, 5, and underneath the intake is going to be 2, 4, 6, if I'm remembering correctly. We do have a master Toyota tech in here, so maybe they can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Are there any questions I need to answer?
Well, yeah, you've missed a lot since you've been gone. I'm gonna put you on the main one.
Yeah, let me cut the noise real quick.
Yeah, that's why I was waiting.
So at least it is still misfiring, so we can proceed with some different tests, but
I'm not a loud talker, so I didn't want to.
I'll have Valerie go ahead and read the comments and questions.
First, I'll update you. Another super chat from X Motorsports.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Where did we leave off? EK is from the Midwest.
Okay.
You got Tech Stream. I thought you said you had a J2534 box.
I have TechStream on my computer, but I'm not sure if I have to pay the subscription to run it in diagnostic mode. So I'm not sure on that one.
Generic is great for emissions and misfires. Steve. I have Solus Edge. Nice tool. That was Jim Morton.
Very similar to the Ethos. Ethos is a little cheaper, a little smaller, and I believe it doesn't have the troubleshooter.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the chat right here. There's a conversation going on within it, so I'm trying to find. Also, if you want to put questions in all caps, that helps me a little. Catching up.
And if nobody's commented as she goes through that, what do you guys want to see for the first test? I normally let you guys direct me. Valerie's raising her hand.
There was a comment, plug wire boot arcing in tunnel.
Okay. So we want to verify that the plug wire is not damaged and the spark is arcing out the side of the boot.
That sounded important. I don't know what that means, but it sounded important. We got to make sure we are in closed loop if using fuel trims for a guide. That's Jason C.
Good point. So I'd have to let it warm up the rest of the way. Since it's been sitting in here with the air conditioning on for the last 2 hours, I didn't look at the data PID, but we're probably below 150 on our coolant temp.
I forgot that I'm on camera and I'm making faces while I try and scroll through this.
Are you using your squint vision too?
Yeah, no, well, I have squinty face when I'm trying to focus.
Yeah. So we have one suggestion on a test, and that's an ignition test, making sure that the spark's not arcing out the side of the boot. So if we take the plug wire off, should we be able to see that? Maybe. We may have to put a spark plug tester on there, and maybe we could run a test light around the boot, make sure it's not arcing out the side somewhere.
Get an HP tuner, delete PO302, done.
Unfortunately, you can't tune this ECM. It's too old.
Is that a mechanic
if you
joke?
could, I would be great on my supercharged version, but instead I have to go through a bunch of other stuff. Okay, so go ahead.
The firing order is right. The first cylinder on the left back should be is number 2, and that's EK.
Okay.
Okay. The old vacuum test. It's easy. Says
Old
Phil.
vacuum test? Says who?
Phil.
Phil? Okay, so what is that going to prove for us, Phil? We have a vacuum gauge. I'm going to go ahead and plug it into the port on the intake, and I'll let you explain what we're looking for.
Question. Can we do a relative compression test using AC coupling on the battery voltage first to rule out mechanical? And that's Steve.
We cannot. We can't do that test because we're pretending that we don't have a lab scope.
Come on, he put it in all caps.
We're pretending we don't have a lab scope for this particular diagnostic process. I can crank the engine over and we can listen audibly at the cranking cadence.
Sorry, EK. I read it out loud how I see it, so if there's any errors, they get read out loud.
Let me see here. You want to go on the left?
Vacuum testing. Yes, I'm under left side. Vacuum testing, as you probably know, is highly underrated. Supposedly springs and valves issues. That's Phil as well. Listen? Question mark?
Who put that?
X Motorsports?
Okay, I'm assuming they want to listen to the cranking cadence.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't expecting that test because I didn't have the scope stuff hooked up.
You didn't bring your ears with you?
No, I forgot my ears at home. I'm just grabbing the necessary tools to...
You don't have your head cam, do you? I was going to have you take us with you.
No.
Question.
Yeah.
Does it have a map sensor or just MAF?
Just the MAF sensor, just mass airflow.
Look at map fluctuations happening quickly at idle. And that was Phil.
Okay, that's what the vacuum gauge will prove to us, hopefully, if we have a fast enough response from our vacuum gauge.
Question.
Uh-huh.
What test would you do first if we weren't helping out?
Well, if it was my normal diagnostic process, I would grab the scope and try to... Well, first I'd verify which cylinder is misfiring via data or actually coming out here and pulling the plug wire off. And then if I didn't have the scope, I may just pull the plug out and look at it, verify that it looks okay, and I have spark coming out of the wire. But I would also listen to it while I cranked it over. That would be the first thing I do. Since this one's an automatic and I don't think that this particular one will do a clear flood. Are you on the main?
Yeah.
That test won't really work. So Toyota's really easy on these engines. There's a 4-pin bulkhead just below the fuse block. There's a big black wire with a white stripe. It's probably a 12 gauge wire. That is our starter enable circuit or our starter solenoid. So I just hooked up a starter button to that wire. Hopefully it'll crank over. It's an automatic, it's in park.
That's cool.
So that sounded pretty even to me. The starter's a little noisy, but the engine cranking sound seemed pretty even to me. I don't know if you guys could pick it up in my mic. So the next thing I'm going to do, since it was the next test recommended, is I'm going to fire it up. We'll switch to the other camera. I'll show the vacuum gauge.
Am I switching to the other camera?
Sure, I'm just moving my cord because it's in the fan. I mean, it's more fun if we get to see cool stuff happen, right?
Yes.
That's like you're always rooting for someone to crash in a motorcycle race. So let me make sure that we focus in on that.
It's blurry. More blurry. There we go.
Okay. So we are about 14 inches of vacuum now. It's still idling right now, about 1,000 RPM. It's still on fast idle. But the needle is very steady. Now, this may seem like low vacuum to some of you, but I'm also at about 5,300 feet in elevation. We're in Colorado, we're a mile high. So I typically see 14 to 17, depending on engine running conditions. Okay, I put the vehicle in reverse so that we can hear the misfire a little more audibly. We're about 12 inches of vacuum. And it's still fairly stable. If I refocus the camera here, I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but the engine is shaking just a little bit. Okay, any other tests? What's our next one?
You're back on the main. Let's see here.
If I was doing it, I would check spark, make sure I have good spark because that's an easy test. Someone mentioned spark already, so I think we'll go ahead and do that one next. I'm going to move this camera to that side of the engine since we know that the misfire is on the other side, so we can see that a little better.
How hard is an injector to get to cylinder 2? Phil's asking.
Unfortunately, that one is underneath the intake manifold, and it's very difficult to get to. I mean, I could have the intake off of this in about 10 minutes, if that's a testing route we need to go. Okay, now you can switch to the left lumix, which is on the right.
Yeah, thanks.
Now I'm just going to grab the wire and wiggle it out of there, but keep in mind that there is high voltage at these plug wires. I have the potential of zapping myself. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
I can hear the spark arcing. Let me lift it up. I notice no audible difference in the way the engine's running when I remove spark from this cylinder. I would say that that has adequate spark to spark any fuel mixture that we have. Now, even when I go down low onto the plug, that snapping sound goes away, which tells me it's probably not sparking out the side of the boot, but we do have a chance of a carbon track on the plug. Like the main. So what do you guys want to do next? Do we want to pull the plug out and just take a look at it, verify we don't have a carbon track, make sure we don't have excessive gap, make sure we don't have a flooding out condition, a rich condition. It doesn't smell like it when it runs, even though I have the pipe on it. Previous experience from it running in the shop. It doesn't smell rich. It doesn't set a lean code or a rich code. So you guys let me know where we're going next.
Yes. Phil says, maybe find bulkhead connector. If there is one, check resistance on injectors.
Okay.
Grant Baker says, stethoscope on fuel injectors.
Okay, and I thought about that when I was trying to figure out how to get a microphone in a stethoscope so you guys could hear it, but I didn't have enough time to get set up. You could barely get a stethoscope on that one injector, maybe, but you can't get a straight shot at it, so the stethoscope is going to pick up some other engine noise or transient noises. This doesn't have a bulkhead anywhere in the engine bay. The wires go straight through the firewall, plug into the ECM on top of the glove box or behind the glove box. So I did remove the glove box and the cover just in case somebody recommended going to the PCM to test something voltage-wise.
Barry Hall says you need a GTC 505.
What's that?
I don't know. What is that?
Let us know what that one is.
Bart Young says look for carbon track.
Okay, so I'm going to pull a spark plug out. I'm going to switch to this other Lumix.
Yes.
Now, if you guys were in my other live stream, you saw me specifically mention that I reposition this one ground wire anytime I have one of these apart, because, let me cover this up, this ground wire right here is right in the way of this spark plug wire from coming out. You can get it out, but it's kind of inconvenient. So I always loosen this up, and this one doesn't look like it's in the factory position anyways, it's normally straight down, but I always rotate it towards the back of the vehicle and tighten that ground wire back up. Make sure it's nice and tight, or we'll have all kinds of issues. That way we can get this plug wire right out.
Phil said, sure, pull the plug, it's easy. Joe Gigliotti wants you to swap plugs.
Swap the plug?
Yeah, and Barry Hall says, ignition analyzer, Google it.
Okay, I'll look that one up because it might be another useful tool to have.
I can write that down. I'll take a screenshot.
And one more thing, if you run into a little bit of issue here, the earlier ones have this diagnostic connector here. It pops off of the intake, gives you a little more room for your spark plug extensions in your socket. Pull the plug out. I'll probably have to refocus this camera. Maybe.
You put your hand, but oh, there it goes.
There we go. Okay. Looks like a factory style plug, dual electrode tip. Looks very clean. A little bit of blackness around the threads, but the porcelain is very clean. Looking at the upper part of the porcelain, I don't see any carbon tracks. It looks like a tune-up was recently performed, and it's probably because of this misfire.
Question from me.
Yeah.
What do carbon tracks look like?
It'll almost look like a little black lightning bolt coming down the side of this white porcelain.
Like Harry Potter?
Like Harry Potter's forehead. Yes. We had carbon tracks on one of our first diagnostic viewer-led live streams. That was on a Ford. That the Ford dealership recommended 6 direct injection injectors. Now, I'm just going to do a visual check of the plug boot. I didn't hear any arcing out the side when I put it back on the plug. I don't see any damage on the inside of the wire. Let me pull the next plug so we can swap them. That one could have a crack inside the porcelain. Maybe the misfire showed up after they tuned it up. This next one, we have issues there as well. There's this one bracket that holds the throttle cable. I'm going to zip that off.
Can I catch you up on comments?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see here. That would be kind of the same as using a scope, though, says X Motorsports.
Yeah, and in case what he's talking about on this diagnostic process, we are using basic tools only, spark testers, digital voltmeter, not digital volt-o-meter or digital multimeter. So just some of the basic tools that we have access to. So this plug looks new and good as well. So it's not like they just put one plug in. I'm going to swap this plug from number 4 to number 2.
Call Scotty already. He'd be done by now, says Phil. Rather swap coils first, quick and dirty, then plugs, says Jim.
Okay, to swap the coil, I do have to pull the air intake boot off. It's in my way on this particular. I should put the plug in the socket first.
Hey, you.
Go ahead.
That plug looked like no fuel misfire, says Phil.
Okay, so if we aren't getting fuel, or if that's what it looks like, then we could have a fuel injector issue.
It was the first one you pulled.
A fuel injector issue, a wiring issue between the fuel injector and the PCM, or the PCM driver could be bad. Now, unfortunately, the easiest way to detect the driver failure could be with the lab scope, but there are ways we can do it without a lab scope. Okay, so plugs are swapped, wires are connected. If we need to swap the coils, we'll do that next, but we had good spark at that cylinder. Sounded like it was snapping pretty good. I'll just take this bracket off so it doesn't rattle down while we're running it.
Comment?
Yeah.
Put spark checker on and check for voltage leak with test light on number 2, says Bart Young.
Okay. Okay, that'll be the next one I do. Right now we're going to verify we still have the miss on cylinder 2 since we're set up. And this will confirm that our plug is or isn't the issue. Of course, it snapped down harder this time. There we go. So I can still hear good spark coming out. Still no difference in the way the engine's running.
Question.
Yeah.
You want me on main or that under?
You can leave it on this one. I'm going to continue hooking stuff up.
Okay, Steve has a question.
Okay.
Is there one fused feed for injectors and individual control wires? If so, pull fuse and ECM connector and resistance check each injector.
Okay, I'll have to pull the wiring diagram to verify that, which we're going to need anyways. I think that it gets powered off of the EFI main relay, which also powers pretty much everything.
Okay, I'm back. Not sure where we are in this diag, but did you blow cigar smoke in it yet?
Is that Corey?
Yeah.
No cigar smoke yet. We're about 20 minutes into the diag. We've isolated cylinder number 2 as our misfiring source. We swapped the plugs, misfire's still there. I got my spark checker on there with about 25 kV is where I normally try to put this. I know they're not super accurate at displaying that, but we want a nice heavy spark here so that we can easily find a leakage point here if we have that.
I'm leaning towards injectors, says Orville.
Now, is it going to be a mechanical issue with the injector, like it's sticking, restriction on the inlet filter, or possibly high resistance in the coil? Verify we're good there.
Okay, I'm gonna catch you back up. Oh, go ahead, I'll catch you up when you're done.
Okay, we're gonna run this test real quick. So you probably can't see that, but we have a nice hot spark there. So it'll jump through from the tester, but I'm not feeling any leakage, or not feeling it. Definitely not feeling it. You see me jump, but I'm not seeing any leakage on the boot. So we're going to assume that the plug wire and the boot is still in relatively good condition, even though they look original with 200,000 miles.
I think your flashlight's on in your pocket.
Yep. Blinding the camera? Or
No.
just shining lights on the ceiling?
It's just distracting me. I'm like a cat looking at one of them little lasers.
Yeah.
May I catch you up now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I already told you that Orville's leaning towards injectors. I was going to say that, Steve, but didn't want to be the guy he'd get pissed off at for going to the PCM. That's Phil. What's the fuel trim look like in Bank 2? Asks Phil.
So unfortunately, this one does not have individual banks on the fuel trim, but now the engine's warmed up, I can verify real quick. I'll just see if it's an enclosed loop. But it has a Y pipe or crossover pipe on the exhaust manifolds. It dumps down into the into a single pipe, and that is where the O2 sensor is and the catalytic converter. So we're still initializing communication, collecting vast amount of data, I'm sure.
Does this tool not hook up to my screens?
This one?
Yeah.
No, the one that normally hooks up to your screen is in California, probably. So we're in closed loop. The engine's at 165. So our total fuel trim our long-term fuel trim is at 17%. Our short term is at negative 3.8. So that would come out to, it's bouncing around a little bit, but we're probably around 12 to 14 positive fuel trim. So it's adding at least 12% fuel trim to compensate for that misfire. Now we're adding even more. So it's bouncing around a little bit. And I think our data is pretty slow, even though we don't have a vast amount of data PIDs on this vehicle. The voltage for the O2 sensor is at 0.2. So it's still running lean, even though it's adding that. But the refresh rate's pretty low, so it may be missing the rich moments on the scan tool. So I believe Steve recommended resistance checking the injectors. Since we don't have access to a lab scope, if we had a lab scope, we could put a current clamp on there. You wanna go main?
You are.
Okay. We could do a lab scope on maybe all the injector wires or at the fuse and look at our current for each one. Since we don't have a lab scope today, we are going to have to manually do that test.
Did you already answer Phil what the fuel trim looks like in Bank 2?
Yeah, we couldn't differentiate bank 1 and bank 2, so it's a combined fuel trim for both banks, and we were averaging, positive 12 up to positive 17. So it is running lean. It's adding quite a bit of fuel. It's probably not running the fuel trim test because of the misfire. It's already identified that it has a misfire. It says, okay, we can't trust our fuel trims at this time.
I'm gonna catch you back up.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I may have to come to you and use the computer over there for a wiring diagram.
Okay. Number 2, injector open coil. Need a scope for this one, and that was Ivan.
Need a scope? That would make it quicker, possibly. No scope today.
Everybody wants you to use a scope.
Everybody wants me to use the scope. Okay. We're going to have to go to the PCM connector, I think, to check our injector resistances.
Question. Joe Gigliotti, coolant level okay?
Yes.
And then Phil says shorted, I'd say.
Shorted?
Yes.
Okay.
To check for fuel, just look while cranking into hole with plug removed. You will see the fuel spray. Bart Young.
Okay.
Let's see here. Oh,
I'm envisioning Brian Culada's Cavalier catching on fire. But he had the injector rail out spraying fuel, I believe.
monitor the fuel trim readings. When the misfire happens, check to see if they elevate, indicating a lean condition. And that was EK.
It has a constant misfire at this point. It does feel worse in gear, but it is not a come and go misfire. It is consistent. So
Sorry.
all the time.
There was more to that comment, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Then add an external fuel supply to check engine when it is misfiring. Check to see if the engine runs better.
Okay, so we could add some extra fuel, see if the misfire goes away. That would indicate that that cylinder is starving for fuel.
Why is it always the number 2 injector? I've seen this failure twice before on this same engine. That's Ivan.
Little more information from the guy I traded vehicles from. He told me that when he bought the vehicle, it had a misfire on cylinder 3, and he replaced the cylinder 3 fuel injector for that misfire. He didn't test it electrically, so he couldn't tell me if it was open or shorted or plugged up. But that is a little more previous information that we always get after we start the diag, and the customer calls and complains about how much we're charging and gives us a little more information that would have made our jobs easier. So, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
We're off today. Volt dropping the injector would show a shorted injector without a scope, asks Jim.
Okay, using like resistance checking it or doing a voltage drop test at the PCM.
I don't know, I'll let you know when I scroll down more. Let's see, black tape on check engine light and it's fixed. That was...
Now I have driven it probably 20, 30 miles with the misfire. Just back and forth to work occasionally while I fix a few other things that had going on. Okay.
My old school Vanity is usually the first thing I grab for volt drop testing. Jim?
The Vantage?
Maybe there was a typo. Sorry, I read it like I see it.
Okay. I'm going to go with electrically testing the fuel injector because that's what we can do the easiest. I'll let you know also that I did stick a stethoscope in there previously to try and listen to that injector, and there was so much other engine noise through the fuel rail I could hear all the injectors clicking, so I couldn't isolate whether or not that injector was clicking or not.
Sometimes resistance check will show it as long as injector coil stays hot and open after shutdown. Ivan.
Okay. This injector is trapped under the intake, so it's a good possibility.
Question. Was the other plug wet? The number 2 was so clean and dry. Bart,
The other plug did not look wet. It had just the normal brown, light brown tint, like you would expect to see.
Question. What's the miss do at higher RPM? Could be an intake leak, possibly. Phil.
You can still feel it above 3,000 RPM, but it's a lot less obvious. But I think that's just because of the higher RPM and faster engine rotation that it's less apparent.
We're almost caught up.
Okay.
Need to go to PCM harness on this one since injectors under intake manifold on driver's bank. Ivan.
Okay. So that's where we're going.
You could try to clean the injectors, EK.
If it's a mechanical issue or restriction in the injector, we can try to clean the injector. If it's not, if it's electrical, this next test should identify that. I'm actually going to jump in next to Valerie and pull the wiring diagram because I don't have it pulled up.
Daniel Diagnostics says, hey guys, I'll be here in the background lurking. Let's see.
You're reading it over here?
Yeah, but I'm right
open
here.
another window.
Go for it. You opened it right where I'm reading.
And do I have that shared?
All data, injector 2, pin 20 connector, Am I not supposed to read that? Why are you laughing?
Someone already pulled it up for me.
Oh. So he might have crossed the injector connections from cylinder to cylinder, Phil. Imbalance test.
So he did not remove the intake manifold when he replaced the number 1 or number 3. I think I said number 3.
The camera's right there.
Oh, well, I was reading that. So the intake manifold was not removed yet. The Toyotas have a pretty good loom that makes it hard to cross the wires. Sorry, bear with me. I'm just looking up the diagram just so I can.
How hard is fuel pressure gauge to hook up?
Very difficult on Toyota.
To try grounding injector wires at PCM, look for flow.
Surprisingly, even with the number of Toyotas I own, I don't have a good pressure tester for the Toyotas. They don't have a Schrader, so I either have to have a 14 millimeter inline connector for the fuel line where it attaches to the frame, or I have to pull a banjo bolt out in order to get that out. I think I have to pull the intake anyways. Okay. And let me know at any point if my audio cuts out, because my battery didn't get fully charged on my microphone. Okay, I'm just looking at the fuel injector. They all get powered from the same wire, which is also powering up a bunch of other stuff, but it powers up the ignition coils. If we can't easily tie into the fuse for that, then we could always tie into one of the other fuel injectors, the power wire there, or even to the igniter, which is really easy to access, to do our resistance test. Okay, injector number 2 is a white wire. Someone already said this, I believe. Pin 6 at connector E10. It shows in my diagram that has 24 connectors. Now, if you looked up a manual, the manual is going to have a different ECM completely, and the pinout will be different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump underneath the dash, and we're going to try and do that resistance check. I think I will tie in at the igniter for our feed, because it's really easy to access.
Can I minimize this?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put it on main for now, so that I'm not full screen. Could you just turn key on, check for 12 volts at injector wires at PCM with meter? Phil.
That would be a good test, but if it's only slightly higher in resistance, we're still going to have 12, actually even if it's really high in resistance, as long as it's not a complete open, we are going to have 12 volts at the PCM still, unless the PCM is grounding the injector. If there's no current flow, and we still even have really high resistance, we will still show full voltage potential from our source.
Bart Young said, fuel pressure gauge is difficult on that. Most banjo adapters are too bulky to fit near the radiator. What was that about?
I was processing the comment while operating equipment, and my brain froze. So, Snap-on EEDM 596F. This one does have Bluetooth, and it connects to my iPad, which I have connected as well. So I have to verify that it's connected, which it's.
If it's dead miss, I'm betting you won't see 12 volts on cylinder T key. I just combined words. On cylinder 2 key on. You're not in camera either, just so you know.
Okay, I'm almost there. I'm just connecting my iPad. Okay, do I have one with the main and my voltage, or just the left?
Oh.
Lumix. Left Lumix with voltage.
I think you only have it with the left.
Okay. Go ahead and go to the left.
I am. It's very blurry.
It's very blurry?
Well, you're probably fine for that, zoomed in. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So this is connected via Bluetooth to my iPad. So as I turn this dial,
That's fancy.
it should change on the screen, is it?
What?
Do you see the dial moving on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys will see the exact same thing I'm seeing here, only a lot more clear. You won't have that glare, and I still have the screen protector on here, which is really scratched up. So we could do voltage drop testing through the injector. Now we could also add a little bit of load with the test light while we're doing our voltage drop testing to test the circuit, to load the circuit.
Check current draw for each injector. Salah? Am I saying your name right? Salah. Digital multimeter. Phil.
Go back to main. I'm going to get a few things set up and moved around.
Main. Question.
Yeah.
Do you like that meter? Is it as good as the ad says it is? Phil.
I've never seen the ad, I guess. I don't remember seeing the ad anyways. But I just like the idea of having a meter that can connect via Bluetooth to my phone. Honestly, a lot of the equipment I buy, for one, I like tools, and two, I like being able to share new tools with you guys, and I also like being able to share nice, clear imaging with you guys when I do my videos. So some of my tool purchases are biased towards that.
Yes.
But the meter does work well. Works like any other multimeter I have. It does have a few other ignition stuff you can do well with it, but it does work good.
Yeah, that's what he commented. World's most expensive meter. And then Steve commented, the things we have to buy to make videos. The list is never ending.
Yes. I have more equipment ordered that I just ordered the other day. Video equipment, not tools for working on cars, but it never ends.
Question. If
Yes.
you add load with test light, will it hydro lock engine? Continuous grounding it during testing? Phil?
The fuel pump doesn't run continuously, so it would spray a little bit of pressure that we have in the rail into the engine, but eventually it's going to run out of that fuel pressure, which doesn't take long on these anyways. So it would probably be best to do it to multiple cylinders first and then hold it for a longer period of time if we were checking current.
And Phil wants to know, do you know other Bluetooth meters like that for cheaper?
I do not. I haven't researched a whole lot. The only tool dealer I have is Snap-on, so that's who I normally go to.
Do you have a camera in there with you?
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, I'm
we were
just getting
supposed to
better access to the connector
see. Yeesh.
and hoping that it'll all be visible for everybody. Okay, go ahead and try GoPro. I'm just going to show what I'm hooked up to, and then I'm gonna move another camera.
Okay,
Yeah, are you on GoPro?
You're on just GoPro. Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, so I believe this is the connector that we need. I think that's a 24 pin. My eyesight's not the best at the moment, but it was pin 6, I believe. So I'm going to set up the other camera so I don't have to hold my GoPro, and then we'll back probe these. I already got the piercing probe on the wire at the igniter. So if we have access to all 6 injectors at this harness, we should be able to test all of them and compare. Actually, if that'll stay put, can you see what I'm doing on that GoPro still?
Yeah.
Okay. And naturally, I have to grab an adapter for my meter. And while I'm doing this, I'm unhooking a adapter off of an ignition probe. Are you guys interested in seeing the Snap-on SIA 2000? It's an ignition probe adapter. I do have one and been messing around with it for a little while. It does some cool stuff, but it doesn't always apply to the new vehicles or it's difficult to hook up, and it's quite expensive. So if you guys are interested, then I'll try and get some videos done on that. Okay, go GoPro and meter.
GoPro with meter. Yeesh.
Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go resistance, and I'm just going to back probe this. I have it unplugged just so we don't get any weird readings. And pin 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm showing open. So we need to find another fuel injector to verify. So I went to the red wire. I'll have to look at the diagram again to see which one that goes to. But my red wire on pin 5 is showing 14.4 ohms of resistance. And the white wire in pin 6, if my eyes are identifying the numbers correctly, is showing open circuit. Let me jump back to the computer and double check the diagram.
Which red wire? There's so many.
Scroll up. Okay, so the red wire is our number 1 injector. And let me find out where all the other injectors go. They actually might go to a different connector. So the other injectors, 3, 4, 5, and 6, actually go to a different connector. So let me unplug that. We'll verify that those are all 14. These should be anywhere from 13 to 15 depending on temperature.
Where's black lead hooked to?
The black lead, I'll show you with my GoPro. I just have a lead coming through the door jamb. And obviously it got cloudy outside and it got dark all of a sudden. But
Cue the clouds.
right there is the igniter. And the black with a red wire that is tied to the injectors is also going to that igniter. So that was the easiest place for me to tie into without disassembling all of the engine stuff.
Why were you working with the lights off?
Because it was bright out. Okay. So we unplug the other connector. And we have a green, red, blue, and yellow. I believe that's what the diagram said. Are you on GoPro with voltage?
Yeah.
So our green, which I believe said number 3, is at 15.8. Now keep in mind, since I am tied in at a different circuit and not at the injector itself, we may have a little more resistance through the splice packs and wiring. So the next red one, I think I'm on the right wires. That's red with a black stripe, 16.3. Blue wire, 16.4. Yellow, 16.3. Go back here to my number 1, 14.4. And number 2, we are still open circuit. And we got crooked. Okay, so what this doesn't tell us is if this wire is good from here to the injector. So I think we're gonna have to pull the intake manifold. Go main.
Yes.
What do you guys think? Do we go ahead and pull the intake manifold? I mean, if I was in a real life situation where I wasn't doing the YouTube stuff and I checked it at the PCM, I think so far we would have been about 20 minutes into this just by checking spark at the plug, swapping the plug, and then checking resistance at the PCM.
Rodent damage, possibly?
Possibly. We are in Colorado. This vehicle did come from a more rural area than we live, and we have a lot of chipmunks up in the mountains, and they love to eat wires, especially underneath the intake manifold.
Time to pull intake, Steve.
Time to pull the intake.
Yeah. EK agrees. Pull the intake.
Okay, these intakes are pretty quick to remove. I'll move the camera a little bit, and I'll have Valerie turn down my microphone slightly so I can run some power tools. What we're going to need to do is just pull the air intake boot off. It's a couple of 10 millimeter bolts on the clamps. There's a few vacuum lines attached to the air snorkel. This line actually goes to the fuel pressure regulator. They don't run vacuum to the regulator on these. They just run it to the intake pipe in case it ruptures. It doesn't spill fuel out.
Pull it when you have a new injector in hand, says Grant Baker.
Okay, more information. The vehicle came with 5 more injectors. When the original injector was bad, they ordered 6. So we do have spare injectors. It was cheaper to buy 6 of them than it was to buy one good one. So they are from Amazon or eBay or something. So I don't know what the quality is of those injectors, but I may have another set at home because I've got several of these engines. What I normally do, are you on that camera?
Yeah.
Is there's coolant hoses on the bottom of the throttle body. I don't like unhooking those because they're a pain. So I normally remove the throttle body from the intake. From the factory, it has a metal gasket. You can normally reuse it without an issue. We'll crack the cables loose. One's a throttle cable. The other one is a kickdown or a throttle valve linkage to the transmission. So I'm going to kind of zip through this stuff. Once we get the upper off, we'll have to do a few more things over here to get the lower off.
You got to use a combination wrench, no sockets, says Phil.
Okay, we're gonna be over our time limit.
You already are over your time limit.
I said no scope. You gonna turn me down?
Yep, there you go. And you just got another super chat
From
Brian at Good Auto Diagnostics for video equipment.
Sweet, Brian. Thank you. Appreciate it. Unfortunately, we don't have the funds to hire better talent.
Hey.
I meant the main actor.
Hey. Boo. Man, the chat is just full with boos.
Boobs?
Yes, boobs. You're missing it all.
Okay.
Oh, Lordy.
2 nuts front and back, 2 bolts here. And then there's going to be 2 longer bolts on this side of the intake air plenum. It's a little hard to see from that point of view, but there's a piece of foam right here that slides up. It covers the PCV hose, so we'll unplug that. Evap hose over here, crankcase ventilation hose there, and I think this vacuum line, what does that go to?
Those TPM shirts are sexy. Are they for sale?
Who's asking?
Corey.
Corey? Unfortunately, this is the only one I have. I don't have more yet, but everyone likes this shirt better than my new design shirts. So we're gonna go back to the classic TPM design and get some shirts made.
No current clamp to voltmeter, asks Craig Terrell.
We could probably watch min max value on the voltmeter with the current clamp hooked up, but I'm not sure if it'll respond fast enough to show it. Since we showed completely open circuit, we would have 0 current on that injector wire. Okay, now that the upper is off, there's a bolt on this bracket. Let's see, 12 millimeter head. There is a 10 millimeter that comes from the back of the intake that holds the wiring harness, and then some more 12 millimeter headed bolts down the center. And we have to unhook that one ground wire that I already repositioned.
We've got another super chat. Another one from Steve. He says for birthday cake.
For birthday cake.
And then there's some, I think those are champagne bottles in the emojis.
Now, I couldn't tell, Steve, with the time zone difference, if your birthday was on the 24th or the 25th.
Yes, I saw that too. He got all the bacon and the princess birthday card.
Pretty sweet stuff. I grabbed the wrong size socket.
That's not the first time you've done that, Orville.
What, grabbing the wrong size socket?
I don't know. Steve's was on the 24th. Oh, yeah.
Yep, that's what mine is.
Your birthday twins.
Yep. It's my 21st birthday.
Yeah.
We're going to wait until next weekend to celebrate, though.
Your 21st?
Yeah, we went and celebrated yesterday by going up in the mountains and going for a hike and going fishing. Okay, I'm going to make some noise.
Yep.
And I'm not sure if that comment about the first time, not the first time I've done this, if that was towards the tool or pulled one of these intakes off.
Oh.
I have a lot of these vehicles.
No, I was taking one of those off.
Okay.
Sorry.
And I've had a lot of them apart because I normally buy stuff that's already broken. Plus, Toyota isn't the best at head gaskets.
And Steve says, I'm 51, LOL.
I'm not quite there yet, Steve, but
33 going on to 90. I'll be sure to get another shirt. Still have the shirt I got from Super Saturday. Brian?
Yeah, I've been told a few times, mostly by Corey, that my shirts are practically useless because they don't have a pocket on the front.
You should make him a special shirt. The whole front of it is just pockets. Not one big pocket, but
that's what I was picturing.
But like 20 little pockets on the whole front of the shirt.
I'm going to lift this up slightly. The fuel return line is actually bolted to the intake, but it has rubber on both sides. So you get a little bit of flexibility if you lift it up first. And I'll stick a ratchet, electric ratchet down in there and zip those two 10mm bolts out.
And you got another super chat from Bart Young.
I appreciate it, Bart. It all helps. So what I want to know is, those of you out there that started without using a scope, and you got stuck with a job like this, what your first step would have been? Would it have been swapping the plug? Just do some swaptronics, swap the coil. Just recommend a tune-up because it probably wasn't tuned up before. And by chance, if you did pull a plug and notice it was tuned up, then you're like, well, did they use good stuff or not? What would you have done first? While we're doing that, I'm going to grab my meter and bring it out here so we can plug into the injectors.
Russian repair. Take the shirt off like Ivan. That was Phil commenting. Does he take his shirt off?
I'm not sure.
I must have missed that episode. Corey, we should do a live stream of the wife buzzing my hair. We can do it in like StreamYard or Zoom, and I can buzz your hair off too, Chad.
Do a group buzz?
Yeah.
I was just mentioning how I need to get a haircut. Okay. Toyota doesn't have a standard Bosch connector on these, so I can't use my quick adapter. But be very careful with the plastic. It's very brittle. I should probably throw a rag over the intake ports so we don't drop anything down there in case the plastic does break.
Looked like a good time, says Brian. Corey has been listening to Eric, says Steve. Head scratching was my first move. And cussing, says Phil. Not a buzz cut kind of guy, but dang it, I need a haircut, says Jim. I saw a YouTube video. A guy cut his own hair with, like, sheep shears. Like scissors. Just an idea. Wait, why are you covering that up? That's me asking.
So we don't drop anything down there, because if we drop anything down there and we don't catch it and we don't notice it, and we put the engine back together, when we start it up, it'll ruin everything. Oh. So, we back on the side in the voltmeter?
Wait. Okay, yeah, now I am.
Okay, I'm on resistance again. And I am checking at the injector. And you probably can't see it in that camera, but I am touching both terminals right now, and we are showing open circuit. Test our meter, make sure our leads are good. And we're good there. Back at both terminals of the injector. Open circuit on that injector. Now some of those were at 16 something, which seemed a little high to me, but that could have been just because we were going through a splice pack or something, since we checked it from the igniter. So I'm going to check the number 4 injector and see what we're at.
This is a brilliant case study. Old school fundamental troubleshooting, says Steve. He gave you a thumbs up.
So 15.4 ohms on number 4. Thanks, Steve. It came to my realization that not everyone has a scope like we have. And I know everyone likes the scope videos, but to reach a broader audience, or maybe some early technicians, some basic testing might be the key thing here. And that one's at 15.4 as well. Those are probably okay, but it's a little on the high side. But it is nice and toasty warm underneath here. And while it's apart is always the best time to check all that stuff. So I'm gonna go back to main.
Yes.
So what would you guys normally do? Would you recommend at this point all 6 injectors, knowing that the vehicle has 220,000 miles? Or would you trust the factory Toyota injectors? We got a bad one or 2, assuming they replaced the correct one before. The other ones are probably good for another 200,000 miles. My other 4runner has 310,000 miles, and all the injectors look original. So they do have the potential for going a long distance. Because we have 1 or 2 bad ones, do we go ahead and condemn them all? If it was a Ford ignition coil, I would say condemn them all. If it was a Toyota ignition coil, I would say condemn them all. The injectors, I'm still a little on the fence of if they should all be replaced. Now, since we already have a full set, I'll probably just go ahead and put all of those in.
Let me see here. Cody, Steve, and MK Me Lab all say 6. All of them. And I'll catch you back up on chat.
Yeah.
A buzz in Colorado means something else. That is true. Mullets ain't bad. Oh wait, sorry, did I miss that one? Yeah, MK Me Labs, count me in live. Got a bloody mullet going. Another super chat from Cody, from Cody's Auto Diagnostics. He is your #1 fan, and there's a pair jumping for joy. Let's see here. I could live with a mullet. The hair flopping in my eyes is a pain in the butt, Jim. Bingo, bad injector. Load test the wires with a bulb as a safety check before we refit the intake. Oops, who was that? That was Steve.
Okay.
Common failure for those 4runners, EK.
You want to switch to the side camera while you're reading that?
Just the side?
Yeah.
Yeah. He almost made it an hour. Not bad, including intake removal. That was Phil.
They said the intake comes off in about 10 minutes if they're factory gaskets, they're reusable. I think it's steel, some are multi-layer steel. This is a new injector from eBay. Now, it does look like the Denza part over there, and it kind of looks like something's ground off there, so they may be actual OEM injectors. Go back to me.
Yes. Are you going OE injectors? Asks Joe Gigliotti.
If it wasn't my vehicle and it was a customer's vehicle, then I would recommend going OE, and as a second semi-undesirable alternative, I would say we could go Ultram or Napa. And that's being that we're a Napa Auto Care Center, and all of our repairs, we're Napa Auto Care Gold, so all of our repairs are 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty.
We lost your mic. But I'm still here.
Okay,
I'm taking over. Where'd he go? Well, I was caught up, and then I got Super Coupe, recommend a 6.
replacing all 6?
Yeah, if it's mine, I'm doing 1. Aftermarket junk won't last like Toyota OEM. Phil?
Okay, am I back?
Guess who's back? Back again. Talk?
Yeah, check.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, I'm gonna have to run with the extension cord plugged into me. Normally, as soon as I get here to set up for the live stream, I plug in my microphone, and
But
somebody got distracted and did not. So it wasn't fully charged.
somebody.
Me?
Wasn't
Yeah.
me, I was at home.
So I'll repeat all that stuff that Valerie's like doing this
Stop talking.
if I didn't have a mic. They might have picked me up a little bit in yours. But OEM preferred, but OEM parts, we have a 12-month, 12,000-mile warranty, even though the factory Toyota stuff's going to last another 200,000 miles. Napa Auto Care Center here. So all of our repairs have 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty, and our primary supplier is Napa. Now, their Ultram line, we probably could get a Denso or equivalent good OE style injector from Ultram. As availability is a concern sometimes, we may have to go with a regular Napa injector. I probably wouldn't go anywhere else, even though a BWD might be all right. But factory would be the best bet. So someone mentioned load testing the wire from the injector to the PCM, just to make sure before we fully assemble everything, which we can certainly do. Now at this point, it's up to you guys. I already have the intake off. Do you want to hang around while I swap out the injector and do the rest of the repair? Or did you guys want to call it quits? That's up to you.
I'll catch you back up on
Yeah.
comments. EK, I would sell only what the customer needs, but give them the option to get all 6 since you're there anyway.
Yeah, we got to pull the rail no matter what, which means there's probably no additional labor time to doing the other injectors, because many times they fall out of the rail when you lift the rail.
That was my thought back when testing individual injectors. Craig? Oops. It keeps jumping.
Okay.
Am I supposed to be under hood?
I'm just thinking, you can. I'm just thinking of what I need to replace the injectors.
Well, we're back on the main because the left is blurry.
The left is blurry. Man, we are having some struggles today.
Let me catch you back up.
Yeah.
I've been working on a 96 T100 with a 3.4 with misfire on 2 and 4 cylinders. Haven't been able to pinpoint it yet. Steve Ham.
Okay. Hopefully this video helped you, gave you some ideas of what to test. I don't think I've ever seen one of these come in, from my experience, with any burnt valves or excessively tight valves that caused a misfire. It's almost always been ignition coil, plug wire, spark plug, or the rare case of the injector.
I'd give the customer the option and recommend them all. Brian. And then everyone telling me your mic's dead.
Okay, I'm currently just unboxing all the injectors to make sure they all look the same. Another thing you have to verify with Toyotas is make sure that the injector you're putting in is the same color or same part number as the one you're taking out, because they have different colors for the same year, make, model, depending on if it's automatic or standard sometimes. And if you don't have the right one, it's going to flow different.
Get in the zone, auto zone injector from there, Phil. I was going to sing it, but I backed out. I chickened out. You got another super chat from Salah.
Thank you.
And his is a pair that is saying thank you. EK says, finish the repair.
Okay.
Bart Young says, gotta go. Great video.
Thank you for joining in. Thanks for the super chat, Bart. Have a great rest of your Memorial Day and stay safe the rest of the week if you're going back to work. So those of you that have family stuff going on, you don't have time to stick around, and you want to take off, the diag's done. We're going to go ahead and replace those injectors real quick because we're not that far away from getting it done. And if you want to stick around, if your family's driving you nuts and you'd rather watch me instead, or if you're isolated at home by yourself, then stick around and we'll continue to try and entertain. It shouldn't take us too long to replace the injectors now that we have the intake manifold off. Let me see if I can get a little better camera angle or zoomed in a bit. Okay, hopefully that's good. These fuel rails, we'll see if we can finagle the injectors out without disassembling everything. There is a crossover pipe in the front with two 17mm banjo or headed banjo bolts that go in. They're probably like a 14mm thread, maybe probably a 12 actually. There's a banjo fitting back here as well. That pipe is also attached to the intake down in the back, which is hard to get to. So what I'm hoping to do is just pull the 4 mounting bolts, lift the rail up as an assembly enough to replace the injectors and get it back together without rolling any of the injector O-rings. I'm going to go ahead and unplug the rest of the injectors on this side. Get my meter out of the way.
Thanks, Mr. Chad, for the lesson. Phil.
Who's that?
Phil.
Thanks for joining us, Phil. Hope you get your Chevy figured out.
I don't know if he was saying goodbye. He was just saying thank you.
Okay. Well, if you're still with us, thanks for sticking around, Phil.
And then EK says, this is a great basic misfire diagnostics video. A lot of guys will benefit from this.
Well, that was the hope for this one. If they can stand watching, the hour-long video, we try to keep it entertaining.
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half long video. We try to keep it entertaining to make it to where people can stand to watch it.
Steve says, 11th week in isolation for me. I'm not crazy yet.
There's some people that were self-isolating before any of this happened. And they're still sane, Steve. So we believe in you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull these 4 bolts, see if we can lift it up. If not, I may just loosen the timing cover and pull one banjo bolt out of the front crossover pipe, because unfortunately all the injectors go in at an angle, so it's hard to lift straight up. Turn me down?
Yep.
And I may have misspoke earlier. I said number 3 injector or number 3 cylinder had a misfire previously, and that injector was replaced. It appears to be number 1.
Is this capable of throwing an injector circuit code like a P0202?
That injector was open circuit and it didn't set a code. So I'm not sure if it's capable or not.
And that was Phil asking.
Most vehicles can and will set a code for the injector when they get high resistance, but this one did not. Okay, I lifted the fuel rail up slightly. One injector just started puking fuel. So make sure your safety glasses are on, which mine are. Protecting my eyes. And see if we get enough wiggle to swap these out.
Yeah, the Chevy is a stake bed. Just flip the switch, bed lifts up. Phil.
Oh, that makes it easy. And you didn't tell us that. And that could be why you have dual tanks, because I don't see many like that around here. So it's probably a cabin chassis model with the center tank between the frame rails in the back. Okay, that one's going to be a little tough to get out, the back one. Ideally, you would depressurize the fuel system per the OEM procedure, but I never do. Let me talk about these Toyota injectors real quick.
I forgot about that to tell you.
So the Toyota injector on this particular model has a double seal at the bottom. They actually have a vacuum chamber around the bottom of the injector that goes to the bottom of the throttle body. So there's this seal, and then there's a upper seal, and both of those seals have to be intact. If you swap injectors to a higher flow injector, you have to make sure that the bottom seal can seal, and then you have to cap off that crossover pipe in the back that goes to the throttle body. That's what I had to do on my supercharged one when I put bigger injectors in.
Gonna take the daughter to eat. Thanks for another viewer-led diag video. See you later, Chad and Val. Always good stuff. Brian.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Brian.
Yeah.
I appreciate having you in the chat.
Yeah, have a good dinner. Them old Nissans have a weird looking injectors, Phil.
Okay, I'm actually going to remove the number 1 injector that has been replaced before because the O-ring has swelled up and I probably won't get that fuel rail back on. So I'll have to see if I have an O-ring for that, or I may rob one off of an old injector to get us by. Go ahead.
Sorry. Had a 95 Sentra last week, Phil.
And it had the same style injectors as these? Or just funky looking injectors? Let me make sure to keep my bad injectors isolated from my good injectors. And I need...
Main camera.
I'm going to have to untether myself because I need more supplies.
And grab something.
Trying to squint to find out where it's at.
You need a crotchet or a or a wrenchy.
Need a crotchet. On top of my workbench is a little tub.
Let me put you on main without me.
Okay. The little tub, it says like transmission goo or something.
Assembly goo?
Assembly goo, that's it.
Yeah.
That's what I need.
Want the stuff on top of it?
Sure. It comes with it. So I normally use, when they're both together, so I can show you easily, a little bit of dielectric grease, silicone grease, or my favorite's the transmission assembly goo when I reassemble fuel injector rails. I just put a little bit of this on the seal or the O-ring before I put it together. This stuff melts away at 140 degrees. Make sure this bottle is the same, but that's normally what they do. I don't see the warning on here, but I believe that's the case around 130 degrees. This stuff will liquefy. So you normally do it for transmissions to hold stuff together as they're assembling it. Once the transmission comes up to operating temperature, it integrates with the fluid and disappears. You just got to make sure not to plug the fuel port on the injector with the grease.
How sticky is it?
I mean, it's like doesn't stick to your finger.
Oh, so it's like sticky tack.
It's more liquid than that. I mean, it's like a really thick frosting. So I normally I should probably clean off my fingers first because they're nice and dirty, but we'll smear that on all the fuel injector O-rings and try and get them all installed back in there. And then we'll load test that one wire, make sure we're good to go there, and put the intake back on. So just a little bit, top and bottom. Makes me wonder if I should swap all of the inlet O-rings.
What's it taste like?
What does it taste like?
Corey's asking. That ain't me. That sounds like a Valerie question, but that ain't me asking.
Yeah, I thought you were asking that.
No, that's Corey.
It tastes bad.
Does it smell good?
Sure. No, it doesn't. I don't know if it has a scent. My hands smell like gasoline. So I'm guessing that if I tasted my finger, it would taste like gasoline also.
Ivan will fix that injector. Salah.
Is that true? Are you still in here, Ivan?
I don't know. I haven't seen him talk in a while.
He's probably out parasailing or something.
I need to watch that video.
I think he's got a few more.
Is he in the air yet? I want to skip to the end.
I don't want to learn about parasailing. I just want to see Ivan sail.
Oh no, I'll never do it. I just want to see him do it.
The one I watched was Ivan was is the one where he also had to fix a loose spark plug in one of the brand new machines, which is a little scary. If I don't know what they call that. I don't know if it's parasailing. It's like parachuting, but you have a big fan motor on your back. Like I don't know if those are 2-stroke, what kind of horsepower they are, but it's like a 36-inch propeller blade spinning right behind your brain. One of those.
Frosting, spoken like a true junk food man. Orville.
You guys can't tell that I love frosting, can you?
Ivan probably has a spare injector in his back pocket, and he's currently rebuilding it for you, Corey.
Well, I'd appreciate it if he parasailed over here real quick.
Toyota again? Do they have any other makes in that state?
Yeah, we have Subarus.
That was Drew.
No, these are just all my own personal vehicles or the vehicles that I buy and end up with that need repairs.
Bill MCK12345 says, sup?
Hey, how's it going? If you're just joining us, we are done with the diagnostic process and we are now installing 5 new injectors. It had 1 installed previously, and we are installing the rest of the set. And I probably should have resistance checked all of them to make sure they were all good before I put them in, but we still have time to do that. I think I got all the injectors installed without rolling over and O-ring. Go ahead.
Why would anyone want to leave perfectly good floor? Flying is for birds and bats, Steve.
So we are not going to torque it, but I am going to finish tightening the rail by hand. Don't want to strip out the intake manifold. I don't think we have time today to put a thread repair kit in there. Let's go ahead and check the resistance of all the injectors now that I got them bolted in. Make sure that we're all good. You want to add the voltmeter on?
Already did it.
So 13. Now these are room temperature, so about 70 degrees. They're going to slowly start warming up as I have them installed in the engine. Around 13. That's why they are quite a bit lower than the ones we removed. Around 13. Same. We're almost done.
Hey, BJ. We have been on for 1 hour and 42 minutes.
And we haven't got anything done. We're waiting for you to join us.
Okay, we're ready to start.
Okay, so all of them are within the normal 12 to 14 range that I would typically see on a hot engine, maybe 15. So that's a good sign, at least for the circuit portion. Hopefully the fueling portion of it works okay as well. Now, we did want to verify the circuit back to the PCM. I think someone commented, can't remember. I have a short memory. That was like 15 minutes ago.
What was the question?
Someone commented that we should verify the circuit back to the PCM before we put the intake back on. Do you remember?
No. Verify PCM?
I think they said load test the wire.
Well, you can just ask who asked that. I'm not seeing it though.
Okay, somebody asked that. We'll have to find out who.
I'm scrolling.
The best way to load test the wire is to actually put a load on it, which we should be able to do with a light bulb, a test light. Let me see. Since we don't have any fuel pressure in the rail, what I can do is I can use my test light inside, or I can even turn on the injector and verify that we have the proper current. Which I don't know if that powers up with the key on or not. Be easier just to load test it. I just have to unhook myself to go grab a couple of adapters. Yeah, it was a little bit ago.
I don't know, was it Phil maybe?
Might have been. Bear with me for 1 second. I know this isn't necessarily an everyday piece of gear that people have, but it'll make load testing the wire a little safer. My AES Wave adapter kit, so I can back probe or front probe this injector connector.
Can we get a rundown on what you found so far?
Yeah, who's asking?
PJ, he just got here.
Okay, PJ. We had a rough idle. Mostly when warm. Typically when it was cold, it would do just fine.
Real quick, the comment about PCM was Steve.
Steve Scott?
Yes.
Yeah. Steve Scott, we got your test coming up. What we are going to do is we are going to load test the wire going back to the PCM. And PJ, we checked spark. We had spark. We swapped the spark plug. The spark plug looked good, and they looked new. But just to make sure we didn't have an internal issue, we swapped it with another cylinder. What else did we do? Sorry, my brain's doing two different things at once.
Chewing bubble gum and walking.
Chewing bubble gum and walking. Difficult task. We then put the spark tester on the plug wire. We use the test light to check for voltage leakage out of the boot. Real quick rundown of what I'm doing here is I have the wire disconnected from the PCM. I am front probed into the wire that goes to the PCM. It's still unplugged. I'm going to hook this up to positive. I know that seems weird, but it's so I can hook a test light up inside the vehicle to ground, because it's easier hooked up to ground, and verify that I have current going through it. So then, once we realized that we didn't have spark leakage, I'm going to go to main. I'm going to move this camera.
Yes.
We went to the PCM to check injector resistance, because that's the easiest place to check all of them at once. And we are doing this without a lab scope. So digital multimeter test only, or mechanical vacuum test. We did the vacuum test, steady needle. I think is that everything we did? Then we pulled the intake off, and that's probably not auto-focusing, is it?
You asking me or the audience?
We determined that cylinder 2 had an open injector. Pulled the intake. We swapped out 5 injectors because before I bought the vehicle, 1 injector was replaced.
Now, what exactly do you want us to be seeing?
The test light.
Okay, maybe. And you're on autofocus?
Does it keep going in and out?
Yeah.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me find a ground to hook this up to.
All he can see is his elbow. It's a very nice elbow.
Little manual focus. It doesn't focus real well when it's not in regular record mode. So hopefully you can see my test light. I'm going to go to that wire. Trying to back probe it. This test light is kind of cheesy. The Harbor Freight one.
Can you make your hand smaller so we can see the test light?
Make my hand smaller. Let me grab a piercing probe.
Just hold it like this. Your pointers and your thumb.
Hold on a second. Jeez. So picky.
I mean, I trust you. If you would have just said,
That is good,
yeah, I trust you.
but they don't trust me. Okay, we're almost done. We're almost done. Shaky, shaky.
Ooh, that elbow.
Where'd that wire go? Okay, test lights.
Yep, I see that.
I do have a higher wattage bulb. I grabbed my snap-on light, but we can verify with the Harbor Freight one as well. Maybe. I just don't like how large the...
Steve trusts you.
I probably should check this Harbor Freight test light.
Is this the same vehicle that had the bad head gasket?
Is that PJ asking?
Yeah, how'd you know?
That is not the same vehicle. I own more than one 4runner now. Okay, so test light lit up, which should mean our circuit's good. We put a load on it. This snap-on one, I believe I have a 300 milliamp bulb in it, so not quite the same as the injector, which is going to pull around 1 amp. I need to check my Harbor Freight one because it wasn't lighting up at all. But I'm going to go ahead and say that it's good. We're going to put it back together. I have to unplug my wires out there before hooking up to the PCM, or we could potentially damage the PCM since I am hooked up to 12 volts out there with an unfused test lead. I'm going to move this camera.
You're back on main.
Okay.
Laguna Auto Tech Performance trusts you too.
Man, you guys are so trusting. Unhook this lead and that lead. Throw those on the ground. So I'm going to plug this injector in. We're going to say that the wiring is good. Okay, so now we got to put everything back together. I'll go ahead and button this up and then we'll plug the PCM, fire it up, make sure our misfire is gone, make sure we don't have any new misfires. We'll clear the codes and hopefully it's all good to go and I will be ready to sell this vehicle. Is that camera even in view?
Yeah.
Okay. Making sure. Let me grab my tether and plug myself back in.
Living on the edge. Oh, I didn't even notice. Or
It
did
should have
you
been
just
charged.
unplug it?
What's that?
Did you just unplug it?
Oh, a bit ago, but it probably charged up enough to run.
finish?
Yeah.
I love that stuff, says Craig.
So if anyone wants to buy a super clean 1999 Toyota 4Runner with 220,000 miles, new seat covers, let me know. Why are there new seat covers?
Oh, lordy.
Because the front seats wouldn't come clean. Where's my intake? Right here. Does anyone have any questions of what we've done so far? I know we just did a recap for PJ.
Live stream is life. No smoke, no mirrors. It is what it is when the cameras are rolling. Steve.
Plus, I don't have to go home and edit for 4 hours.
Yes.
And I do enjoy the personal interactions a lot more. It's a lot funner.
Yeah, it keeps it interesting. I just wish there was a way to go back and edit when I mispronounce words or read comments out loud that I shouldn't read out loud.
So you want that take back button?
Yeah.
We could go back and edit the door shut.
A ghost.
But it adds I think it removes the chat if I edit the video. Okay, I'm gonna make a little noise.
Yep.
Tightening the fuel rail or the fuel return line back to the intake underneath.
I hear ya. Editing is my least favorite part. MKME Labs.
Yeah, sometimes it's not bad, but sometimes I just completely dread it.
And then, I'm sorry.
It's a big time sink, depending on what you're filming and how complex the project is.
That's the when editing sucks, Steve.
I don't even know if I could convince Steve to edit a project for me, even if I bribed him with bacon. I think that's...
That'd be a lot of bacon.
Yeah.
Paramotor?
What's that?
Paramotor.
Paramotor?
Yes.
That's what Ivan's doing?
No, that's what Craig said. Craig Terrell.
Yeah, I think that sounds like the correct term for what he's doing.
LOL or give bad info. That was me, not Chad. X Motorsports.
You know, I'm trying to think if I've ever given like completely incorrect info. I did in one video that I took down because I was doing a Subaru transmission pan and a internal filter, and someone, you know, made sure to correct me and let me know that it's not an internal filter and it's just a screen and it doesn't need to be replaced. Which I realize that, but I often take them down to clean them out. But just because I didn't want to deliver the incorrect information and didn't want people getting confused, I went ahead and removed the video. And I never had time to go back and re-edit that one. But 1 second, we'll make some noise.
Sorry, I have it turned down as much as I can.
Okay, and I had someone criticize me a couple weeks ago on my Toyota Tundra transfer case motor video because I mentioned that you have to disassemble the transfer case to change the motor. And I responded back telling them to be honest that I didn't know that people were changing the actuator without it. And I then went and looked up to see if they had a procedure, and I could not find a procedure from Toyota to do that job. They don't show it. And most of my understanding, you have to disassemble it. But there are some hacks or tricks you can do to change it without disassembling the transfer case. But I told them, since it's not a OEM recommended repair to do it that direction, I have not shared that information. If PJ's still in here, he could probably confirm that one way or the other.
Meaning the wire diag earlier was looking at the connector wrong. X Motorsports. And then Steve, ooh, bacon. I deliberately leave gaps and make mistakes to promote conversation. It helps keep the trolls happy as well. Steve. People sneak them out, but I don't trust the method. PJ.
Yeah, it seems like any customer that I've had that's tried it, it still comes in for me to diagnose it because they didn't get the gear installed back in there correctly, and it still doesn't shift properly. So I don't recommend the repair. And that particular person, I would call them a troll at times, but they actually commented back stating that they found out that not all the information that they put was correct because their vehicle's a Toyota 4runner, and the 4runner transfer case is different than the Tundra, and you have to split the case on the 4runner. So I was surprised because most trolls won't, or I guess he wasn't a troll, he was just stating that there's other ways of doing it, but most of them won't come back and apologize when they made a mistake on information as well. And if someone's a real jerk, then they just get deleted. Because some people, the information doesn't help anybody, and they're just saying stuff to be mean.
Disassembling that case half isn't that time consuming anyhow, PJ.
Now, do you normally do it in the vehicle, PJ? You just leave the front half attached to the transmission and pop the back half off in the vehicle? Because I did a Toyota Land Cruiser part-time four-wheel drive kit the other day, and all I had to do was pull the rear half of the housing off. But on that particular one, the actuator is in the front part, so I didn't even have to mess with the actuator. I just had to remove the center differential.
I'm a hack. Orville?
Yeah, some people call them hacks when you take an easier path. And I think as long as it's a legitimate repair that doesn't damage or modify the vehicle drastically, then I'm okay with it. I don't like the ones where you cut a big hole in the heater box on the Jeeps to replace the blend doors and then put some sealing tape over it. To me, that doesn't seem like a valid repair or one that I can, call a professional repair for my customer. So I don't do repairs like that. But some of it is, I still see it as a legitimate repair if it can be done without having to do the major job. But most of the time, we try not to.
No, I take the transfer case down. Getting the clips off the shift forks are a pain, so I'd rather just do them on a transmission table.
Yeah, those transfer cases come out really quick. Because I've had several of the 4th generation 4runners come in with that motor locked up. And some of them, they drove it for long distance in 4-wheel drive and caused other damage, either to the front differential or the transfer case. And I've replaced the entire transfer case on many of those. And I can have those in and out in an hour and a half.
Almost choked on my coffee.
Choking over there?
Yeah, dude, that shop floor is spotless. Looks awesome. Corey.
Really?
Yeah, that's why I almost choked.
This is dirty.
I think it's just the lighting. On my end, it does look really bright and clean.
It's dirtier than, not dirtier than always, but dirtier than it normally is. I wish that we would have done epoxy coverings or paint when my dad first built the shop.
Orville says, Corey, that's a studio.
I'm going to zip all these bolts down.
Yep.
We got one more.
Sorry, I have his audio all the way down.
Didn't hit the ground. There goes my 10mm socket. I actually have to find one fastener that I dropped as well. It did not go down the intake.
PJ says, I just want to know who is subscribed to each and every one of us and gives us all a thumbs down as soon as a video is posted. And then Craig says, Kilmer does.
That's a good possibility.
I'd be honored if Scotty came over and gave me a thumbs down.
I think he mentioned once that he doesn't watch other YouTubers. But then again, whoever's thumbs downing my stuff, I don't think they watch it anyways. They just open it up and hit the thumbs down button. Who had a thumbs down on a live stream that hadn't even started yet? I can't remember who. Someone recently.
In my field of YouTube, that's pretty common for people to come dislike before we even start our live streams.
Oh, man. Okay, I dropped a 12mm nut. I'll have to find it. I dropped it when I took it apart. It fell down over here.
I miss Dunkin' coffee. Dark roast with cream and sugar. Staten Island, here I come. Steve. Corey says, first 12 cups are on me, Steve.
Okay, 1 second. I see my socket. Grab it with a magnet.
And then PJ said, Mario. Mario in here?
No, Mario's the one that's thumbs downing everyone.
Oh.
No. Oh, maybe that's who it happened to, was Mario.
Scotty doesn't watch other YouTubers because he's afraid he'll find out he's a hack.
So Scotty has a new channel. And I didn't see him in it, but he voiced over one of the videos. I clicked on it the other day. And it wasn't the normal Scotty. It wasn't super dramatic. It was like just a standard voiceover. And it wasn't as bad. I didn't finish watching the video because the content didn't really apply to me. It was more for a consumer. Okay, just so you know, I found the missing nut. It was on the floor, even though it didn't sound like it hit the floor. And I got my 10mm socket back.
It was Mario's live stream that had a thumbs down before it started.
Yeah, there's somebody out there that... And, you know, honestly, if I do something wrong in a video, yeah, give me a thumbs down or whatnot. But I think that sometimes it's just not... You know, YouTube recommended the video to them and it didn't really apply to them, or it wasn't the same vehicle that they were looking for, or it wasn't in the language that the person speaks and there isn't translating subtitles or anything like that. I think that people just thumbs down it for that. But at the same time, you know, some people are just mean. Okay, I'm gonna run my impact.
Yep. It's weird how much it's picking up today. It still stays in the red when you use it, even with it turned all the way down.
Tighten up my throttle cable. I'm going to make sure that it's adjusted properly. It's really common on these Toyotas, and I noticed it when driving it. The throttle cable wears out. There's a rubber bushing above the accelerator pedal that disintegrates, and then you don't get full throttle. So if you get one of these in here in your shop, or you're working on one that seems like it has low power and everything else checks good, have someone romp all the way down on the gas pedal and make sure that it's actually going full throttle.
Question.
What
kind of other issues have you been seeing in the shop lately? Asks EK.
Customer car related issues,
Not
like some
sure.
common problems.
Oh, I thought you were asking. Sorry.
Is that what you think they're asking?
I'm not sure. We will find out in a second.
Okay.
Found the fastener and the 10mm. Steve.
I'm surprised we found the 10mm, but the only reason we found it is because it's my favorite 10mm and it has an 8mm attached to it. So I think the 8mm narked out the 10mm on where it was hiding.
Car related issues.
So surprisingly, I have a picture of it somewhere, but we have had a whole bunch of mid-80s Chevy trucks. I don't know if it's the stimulus check or what, but we had mid-80s Suburban for an engine. We put a Jasper in it. One in here for a transmission, a truck. One in here for carburetor issue or fuel pump issue or something. We don't do a whole lot of carburetor stuff if we don't have to. We try not to.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
Gotta go. Barbecue is calling. Hope you had a great birthday weekend, Chad. Catch you later. Cheers, everyone. Later. X Motorsports.
Hey, thanks for stopping by, and you have a great day, and I hope that barbecue is good. Now I'm getting hungry. Other than that, I haven't had a whole lot of diagnostic work the last couple of weeks, which is kind of weird. It's been a lot of weird stuff. And I think that a lot of that comes down to the stimulus check. People are bringing in vehicles that they normally wouldn't put the money into a repair, or maybe wouldn't have the money for the repair, but since they have the money, they're getting it fixed because new vehicles are expensive, so may as well fix what you got. Nothing comes into my head of off the wall stuff that was fun and exciting. Just putting a few tools away and we'll fire it up. We'll have to crank it over a little bit to reprime that fuel rail. This vehicle probably doesn't prime on key on. I believe they just prime during crank. Should be charged up enough to go untethered. Okay. Everything's clear of the cooling fan. Our plug wires are clipped back into place. Now we will have to, I'll probably start it up and shut it off right away once it does start up so we can verify that we don't have any fuel leaks. Then we can fire it up and make sure that it runs good. Now keep in mind, it only misfired when it was hot before. So I'll have to get it hot. We may not have time for that for the rest of the live stream because it'll probably have to run for 15 minutes or so. But we'll make sure it runs good for the time being. Okay, we're not starting yet, and that's because I didn't plug the PCM back in. Did anyone say that yet?
No. But you had me a little scared. We've already been here for 2 hours and 10 minutes. And a comment from Orville. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me hang out. My wife was admitted in the hospital today, and I can't visit her.
Anything bad, or I mean that's kind of a bum deal that they're not allowing visitors still at the hospital. I know some people have been able to visit family members in the hospital, but certain areas are on tighter lockdown than other. Okay, we're going to try that again with the PCM plugged in. Okay, almost started, probably still filling up the fuel rail. Okay, now it does sound like it's running nice and smooth. It may take a few seconds to purge all of the air out of that fuel rail. I'm going to go ahead and put it in gear, see if I feel any weird shaking or anything like that. No, it seems pretty smooth. Shut it off and we'll check for leaks. I don't smell any fuel and I don't see any fuel, so I think we are good to go.
Dope in my Homer voice. Dope! EK. It's fixed.
It's fixed.
Salah.
So now I can almost sell it.
Why almost?
Because I have to do an alignment on it and a power steering pump. I had a few other repairs to do to it and it'll be ready for sale. I swapped out all the carpets on it too. The old carpets were too dirty and gross to retain them. Luckily my dad has a parts 4runner, so we stripped a bunch of interior parts and swapped them into this. Any questions on the repair? Take these off so I can see I'm getting smudged up already. The diagnostic or the repair process. If we had the scope, I probably would have gone to a common power source if we had it to check the coils and the injectors right off the bat, and that would have led us in the right direction. Since this has a lot of other stuff running on that fuse, I probably would have went to the PCM and tried to get an amp clamp around the fuel injector wires.
Wow, you're still streaming? I just got back. Phil. Great diagnosis. Thanks for sharing. Steve. Yay, what's the asking price? EK. Great job, guys. Mr. Cook. Tell Jack Daniels I said hi. Craig.
A 4runner like this in my area, this one does have the rear locker. I'll probably, even though it's above the price range I'll probably list it on Craigslist for like $5,000. And bare minimum, I'll take like $3,500. More realistically, it's going to be around that $4,000 range in my area. I have another 4runner I'm going to sell as well. The one we did the head gaskets on, it's a 96 with more mileage on it, but it's a cleaner body, cleaner interior. The seat's a little torn up on it, so I'll probably put seat covers on it, but everything else is clean. I'll probably list it at the same price, even though it doesn't have the rear locker, and let people talk me down to whatever. I don't need to sell them, so I'm not in a hurry. I'll just leave them listed high and see what happens.
Thanks. Great time. Gotta go. Joe Bush. That was awesome. Orville.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone for coming down. I'll jump around to the other side of the camera with Valerie, and we'll give everyone the farewell.
He's walking. So you're gonna jump over.
Jump over. We'll probably have an echo.
You want me to turn mine off?
No, I'll just turn mine off. He's about dead anyways. So thanks everyone for stopping by.
Should I scoot over so they can see my chair?
Flat Rate Master. Was he in here?
Yeah, he's right here. He left his sweater. No, he wasn't in here. Happy birthday. What's next?
What's next? What else do we have? I have some major repair processes I need to do. I need to do the repair process on this vehicle.
You can scoot over.
I probably won't do any streaming on that just because it's hard to see some of that stuff. I got to put an engine back in my Volvo that I took out a year ago. So I hope I have all the parts still.
Me too.
Now, for repair, I have a Subaru that has a rod knock. And I've been considering pulling that engine out and disassembling it live. Let me know if that's something you guys are interested in. And we may reassemble that the following weekend.
Earlier, you had asked if anybody wanted to see a video on your new scanner or something. Somebody said yes.
Okay. Doug Wilson uses that quite a bit as well. It's called the SIA, I think it's Secondary Ignition Adapter, SIA 2000 from Snap-on. They made a distributorless ignition adapter for their old lab scopes, the Counselor and Counselor 2. They make a similar one for the modern Snap-on scan tools. It's probably been around since the Modus or the Virus, but it allows you to capture coil on plug ignition or distributorless ignition a little easier. So it's kind of a fun tool to play around with. It's very expensive, so it's not something that is justifiable for all shops. I think the kit's around $2,000 to $2,500, and then you have to buy all the adapters separate. So it gets elevated in price the more stuff you want to do with it. But we'll do some stuff with that, especially if I have a V8 vehicle or another vehicle in here with a misfire where we're using the scope, and that's where I've been practicing with it. I got good captures off of an LS motor the other day. So we'll break that out next time we're doing a diagnostic video with ignition systems. Yeah, thanks for that, Steve. If you guys haven't already, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. You may have to scroll or move your chat to do that, but I appreciate it when you hit the like button. Mm-hmm. And thanks everyone that donated to the stream. We continue to buy more and more equipment, try and bring this stuff to you. The equipment that I'm purchasing hopefully makes it easier for us to get set up, and then we're more likely to have live streams, because that's the biggest burden at this point, is getting everything set up and torn down, because we can only do it on the weekend when the shop's empty.
Your newest purchase was neat for the iPad.
Oh yeah. So the voltage screen that you guys are seeing from my meter, it was easy for me to get it on my phone and my iPad, the Bluetooth system, but I didn't have a good way of sharing, because since I run Apple phones and iPad and run PC, you can't do screen mirroring very easy without crappy software that reduces the resolution. So we went to, where did we find that, Walmart?
Yeah, Walmart.
Walmart had it, the HDMI adapter for my iPad. So that was able to bring that up on screen so you guys could see what I'm actually doing with the multimeter instead of having to read the glare. Now, any multimeter would have done the same thing, whether it's a $20 one from Harbor Freight or an expensive one from Snap-on. They're going to operate the same way. The small, minute differences in accuracy at this point, I don't think are going to be affecting the results enough to matter. We still will come to the conclusion of an open injector. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. If it's still,
it's not the weekend.
If it's still Monday, if it's still Memorial
not even
Day,
the
have a great rest of the day. If you guys are doing barbecue and that stuff, save us some. Let us know where it is, and if it's within an hour drive, we'll be there.
3 hour.
3 hour? I don't know if I could wait 3 hours to eat.
Yeah, I'm hungry too.
Okay, thank you everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.